Jasper International Film Festival. I would like to bring up our director, Manny Scary.
Can we have the filmmakers come up, please? Oh, and vote for your favorite film.
Sure.
It's not working very well. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. We're gonna see if that works. Yes. Yeah, no. Well, we'll share this. Yeah. Yes, I'm Maddie Scary. I'm the director of the film festival, and thank you all for being here tonight. Isn't this a beautiful film?
Yes.
It so reminded me of our community. I think that's what's so amazing, what you did, what you accomplished, is that every community has their thing. We had the Garlic Festival, and unfortunately for Gilroy, things went wrong for the festival, but it's coming back, and it takes a community to bring it back. It took a region to bring this festival to life, and it has. And we're a 8-day festival, 72 events in 18 venues in 4 cities, because our communities come together and make it happen, and that's a beautiful thing. And so it's wonderful to see you do a documentary about a community that no matter what comes in front of them, they still fight to make it happen because it's their identity, and it makes them proud, and it ties them to their community. So thank you for doing this documentary. It's so beautiful, and I think as small communities we appreciate that, because sometimes we're forgotten, and it's forgotten of what identifies us and what makes us who we are. And every single city in the film festival has their own identity and their own passion and their own community that supports that. So thank you so much for. That's what hit me so hard with watching your film. And I saw a couple people with tears in their eyes because it is emotional. It is emotional. First thing, please introduce yourselves and talk about what you played in making the film, and let us know why you decided to participate, why you decided to do what you did.
So my name is Charlie Hudson. I'm the producer of Firebird Pittsburgh, and I did the film has a connection to me because I am from the town that it takes place. I'm from Phoenixville, and then so one year I brought all of my outside Pennsylvania friends to the festival to experience it. One of those friends was Colleen, and so you can take it from here, I think.
Hi, my name's Brady, and I directed Firebird Pittsburgh. So when Charlie took us all to the 2019 festival, I was really moved by the imagery, obviously as like a visual artist, but also I loved the imagery of seeing the embers floating into this like super dark night, and I thought it was just like a perfect metaphor for like all these specks of light despite the darkness, all this like hope despite, all the dark things that happen. And I think it just like left me with a lot of questions, and I felt like if this was interesting to me and this was inspiring to me, then why wouldn't it be for other people? And I think growing up in a small town, I wanted to have that visibility for other small towns and other communities and how they extend themselves for other people, because I feel like that's so often lost in our culture. We're very individualistic, and like it's very cool to see communities come together in that way.
So one of the things, you talk about the imagery, and I'm a documentary filmmaker myself, and I think I've spoken both of you about this. It's just, to make, the interviews interesting, it's not easy. And I feel like what you did in this film was you took each individual person, you created an environment around them that matched their personality and matched what they were talking about. Can you talk a little bit about how you went about doing that?
So Ben Carolyn was our cinematographer, and he came up with he works very closely with our second unit cinematographer, Angel Fajardo, and they together came up with this idea of like a frame within a frame in a lot of the interviews. So like with Henrik, like the doorway to his kitchen was like perfectly behind him. Same with Marianne, and Derek's had like the fireplace behind him, kind of framing him, and we just ran with that. You know, they ran with that motif, and it worked out really well. And then, like in terms of the space around them, for a lot of them, we shot their interview in their home, and as filmmakers, we want, you know, with documentary, you want to have a really interesting background. You want to rent out the space or something. We're like, all these breweries in Phoenixville. He's one of those, but I think you said like their home is like actually kind of a perfect place because it does encapsulate them, and yeah, it worked out beautifully.
Yeah, and to continue off of that, I felt like having it, the interview setting to be in like such a personal place like their home just brings you into this comfort level of what community means. It's not this like sterile background and environment. It's like, it's literally the community inviting you into their homes and telling us their stories. So, yeah.
That's not always easy because not everyone's home is cinematic. But I felt like you really made it work, and I know the effort that goes into that. So kudos to you for doing that. Do we have any questions that anyone wants to ask? I can talk to them all night. Yeah. Yes, David.
Can I ask what the budget was for this? It was really well done.
Oh, well, it was, well, yeah, a lot of favorite. I would say it's mostly self-funded. We did some crowdfunding. So yeah, and then won a small grant. It was, you know, mostly self-funded. No? Okay.
Peter.
How long did it take you from, you know, beginning concept to wrap?
So we went to the festival in 2019, and I was like, cool, 2020, perfect number. We're gonna make a nice little short about this. And then the pandemic happened. So it extended our filming for 2 years, and then we edited it for another year, and then kind of finished post and started doing the promotion for another year. So we're in our 4th year.
Olivia, you had a question.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So kind of jumping off that one, did you have a plan if the city council had said like no to the 2021 one?
I think in my head, I was just like, okay, we're just gonna wait for the next year. We didn't really have much to lose, and it was like, then we get another year of building relationships with these people if it doesn't work out. But I think you can hear my voice like when they approve it, and I'm just like, yes, because yeah, I just wanted to see it come into fruition, and sure, I could have waited another year, but I didn't want to.
Any other questions?
I had another one. Because I'm sure that a lot of this takes inspiration from like Native American traditions. Do they use the festival as an opportunity to kind of educate about indigenous culture and stuff?
So it's not indigenous in nature. Henrik kind of took it from some traditions in Denmark, but they do heavily acknowledge like the indigenous people that like came from that area, and that happens a lot when they come together to do their like I don't know, sometimes they just come together to hang out, to play music and dance, and that's kind of when they acknowledge a lot of like bad influence as well as celebrate it, honestly. So yeah, the origins of the festival aren't, indigenous.
What is the population of the city?
I want to say something like 25,000. I want to say it's a small suburb outside Philly. So that sounds right to me. 25,000. I might be a little off on that.
Yeah.
What's the next step for your film?
Potentially some more film festivals, just screen it in as many places as we can, and then later some kind of distribution, and that is the next step after film festivals. I don't know if do you have anything to piggyback?
Just more educational screenings. We're trying to branch into that, hopefully get on a streaming service, and then bring it back to where it started, the community theater in Phoenixville. So.
I just want to say I really loved all the imagery at the end with the people with the wings and the fire in the background and all the twirling fires going on. That was just beautiful to watch. And what's your next project? Do you have another project in mind after this?
Yeah, I have a few in mind, but they're all still in very baby stages. So the next thing I kind of want to do is this was really cool to cover an event, but it was also very, it was like a huge commitment because sometimes we would have to drop everything to go one weekend and capture something. So the next project I want to do is a little more thoroughly researched and a little more relaxed, so I don't have to drop everything. But that's kind of generally the plan. But who knows? Maybe I'll find another festival that I want to cover. So
No COVID.
no COVID.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you chose your cinematographer, and also how many hours of footage did you have to get to where we are now?
Yeah, I'll talk about the footage. Over 20 hours for sure, and I would say maybe close to 30 hours. And I would say most of that footage is them building, because we went multiple weekends to go film them build, and we cut that all down to about 25 minutes maybe, all together. So that was huge part of the process. And then also a lot of the footage was the Zoom meetings. All of 2020 was all the Zoom meetings, and so we had to watch those over and over again, pick up the good parts, pick up the important parts. So yeah.
Yeah, so the entire project, I have it on multiple hard drives. It's about 8 terabytes, so that gives you any kind of understanding. When it comes to cinematography, Ben and Angel, we both went to school with, and Ben was a DP for my summer thesis, and that was a documentary as well. And it was really important to me to make a beautiful documentary. People kind of find documentaries as informational and not really an opportunity to make everyday life really beautiful, or any kind of topic or emotion. And that's something that I've seen with this new wave of documentaries, that there's this push to make it beautiful. And so I really wanted to run with that. So Ben did an amazing job on my thesis, so I was obviously I want to make this pretty, so Ben comes along with me. But yeah, so I felt like it was important to align that way with the vision, and so that's how I picked.
Any other questions? Yes. Sure.
Hi, Colleen. I love the music. I
Thank
just
you.
wanna say that. I was curious in the whole process, were you giving cues to your composer about how you wanted it? Because I noticed a lot of the music that is over the dialogue in the interviews, and it worked really well. Heinrich's voice is kind of high pitched, so the music kind of set right at the right sweet spot so that you could hear both. And then it would kind of unfold and build in
I'm really glad you noticed because I feel like we could only capture so much, and so we use that as an opportunity to really capitalize on the sound design and the music to move to get us to that like next 10% and like really move the audience. And so we worked with Amir, our composer, who we also went to school with, and he's an amazing musician in his own right, but then we kind of met with him weekly and we would go over scenes. And he would come out of the woodworks with like these amazing songs, and then like he would tailor it to like each scene, and we go over like which points, like when it hits, and I would go on these long monologues of like, okay, and when he says that, and then this is the emotion, and it swoops, and then whoof, and I don't know, he got something out of it, and then Charlie did our sound design, which was amazing, and I feel like that really helped piece together like the music and sound and carry the story. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just talk about what the difference between music and sound design is.
So Amir Muhammad wrote and composed all the music that you hear, and then when those were completed, he gave them to me to put into the overall mix. So I had to mix it with the dialogue and some other like ambient sounds. And you mentioned like the dialogue and the music being at the right level. I think we like there are multiple exports that we have of the movie, just of the music up a little bit higher, just to find that sweet spot. Because it's it's important to to convey the emotion, how much the music complements everything else, and the leveling is super important to that. So the sound design, the sound mixing process took about 5 months, and it was a process, and it was sort of my first time delving into that world. So I learned a whole new discipline, a whole new world of sound, but I don't know, I had fun with it actually. So.
How did you get such nice clean dialogue when there's like 40-mile-an-hour winds going on outside? Should I go that at all?
I mean, there are mics with a lavalier mic. Mic like that, and
Did you do lavalier and boom, or did you do both?
For most of the day with the strong winds, the day that was canceled with all the strong winds, everyone was mic'd with lavalier, and we had a boom operator running around. And then in terms of making sure that's clear, it's just like noise reduction and frequency work. And just frequency spectrum, and I forget the names of I'm now forgetting the names of the sound design terms.
Isotope is your friend. Yeah. Isotope.
So can you talk about why you did boom and lavalier at the same time? What that means and why that's a good thing to do?
Just to get the full range of sound. And even with the interviews too, everyone in the interviews had a lavalier and there was a boom over them. And because you need that fullness, and when it's time for me to do the mixing, I can pick both of them, I can pick one of them, whichever one sounds cleaner, whichever one is easier to get noise reduction out of. So yeah, it's all just about options and fullness.
And also you can get a room tone, which you can have a continuous sound throughout, so you don't feel the edits.
Right. Yeah, after every interview, it's like, hold for room tone, and then we just sit in silence for like 30 seconds. It's actually kind of therapeutic. I like room tone. Yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned the school. What school?
Oh, Fairleigh Dickinson University. It's in New Jersey. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
So what was really interesting here is that we heard about the town, but we only saw the field, but yet we had these, between their characters, real people, describing their experiences. How did you make the decision of who was gonna make it into the final cut? Because I thought that was really fascinating, that, I mean, now I wanna go there, and I don't even know what the town looks like, right? Like, I don't even know, I mean, there was a couple of shots in the streets, whatever, but I think what was key is the folks that you chose, that did vibrancy and historical reference, but how did you make that decision though? I'm pretty sure you had other people you interviewed.
It all started with Henry, because when we started the research, we heard that Henrik is the Firebird guy. He's the guy you have to give to. And so it started with him, and then he kind of took us by the hand and he mentioned in our first meeting with him, he mentioned Derek, he mentioned Marianne, and so we just kind of trusted with him, and then we did some more research as well. But yeah.
So it was based on who was, propelling the Firebird forward, but we also chose people who really understood the significance of the history of Phoenixville. So we interviewed Barbara and then Bob, who runs the Colonial Theater, and the Colonial Theater is such a landmark in the town, so that made sense. And then also the mayor, which was that was really cool. That was our second interview, and I felt so cool interviewing the mayor. But yeah, so I felt like it was important to interview people who are important to the Firebird, but also Phoenixville. So it was this more holistic experience of, you can't just separate Phoenixville from Firebird and Firebird from Phoenixville, so that you're going into it and it's one and the same.
Any other questions? Are you gonna continue to do documentaries? Or are you interested in narrative?
I'm interested in narrative, but I feel like you gotta go with what life presents you, and I feel like right now it's documentary.
I wanted to do a narrative next. That's my plan. Is the next thing I want to do is a short narrative. Take a little break, I guess. Feature documentary is, it's a huge undertaking. So short narrative is the next step.
Well, a lot of people think documentary, oh, that's so easy. It's just, interviewing people and getting B-roll and putting it together. But you're talking about 30 hours of film down to an hour and a half. It's not easy, yeah.
It's still like a huge undertaking, a huge process. And you mentioned the finding the story in the edit and cutting it.
Right.
You get mountains of footage, and you gotta find the story, and you also gotta find. You gotta get as close as you possibly can to your original conception before you even start shooting. It's sort of like a reversed Jenga tower coming down, like editing with all that footage, in slow motion. It all comes together. So yeah, and it's challenging but rewarding.
There's this quote by Alfred Hitchcock, which is that in narrative, the director is God, but in documentary, God is God, like God is the director, basically. And so you can manufacture your antagonists and your forces in narrative, but in documentary, you're just fighting against nature, and whatever happens, and you got to deal with it. And sometimes you won't hear the perfect things in the interview, and you just have to make them work. Sometimes weather cancels your whole event, and you just have to make it work. So that's kind of the challenging part of documentary. Like, you cannot plan for these things. Like, life happens at you, and you just have to forge through that anyway.
Did you have a structure? Did you have a storyline that you wanted to follow?
A little bit, yeah. When we transitioned from short film to feature, I wrote a little outline being like, okay, these are the extra things we'll cover so that we can make an entertaining hour and 30 minutes. So yeah, a little bit.
Any other questions? Are we good on time, Connie?
Yeah, that's good. We have time for a few more. Our next slot starts, we can start in 5 minutes.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about more like what you want to do next?
Sure. So I'm interested in this idea of death, but how we're a lot of working professions with death and like how they cope with it from day to day and like what their understandings of it is, like dealing with dying people, but also because that transition is like really intense, and I feel like I just want to understand it from a personal aspect, but I also want to create something that might help people who are dying, to
Is
like
it grief or death? Both?
death.
Death.
That transition, it's a pretty mighty transition,
Yes.
and nobody can prepare for it. But
No.
like there are ways to cope and have an understanding, so you can kind of go as easy as you can.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's brilliant.
thank you.
Tough topic.
But I want to do research, and like there's a lot of ethics involved of how do you capture people who are dying in like a respectful and dignified way, and so that's why I want to do my due diligence so that it's like a good story, but also everybody's represented in a good way.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, because we all think we're invincible.
Right. Yeah, and you never know when it's gonna happen, but we want to be able to like kind of go out on our own terms. So that's, yeah.
Beautiful.
I have the script for my next short that I want to do, and it deals with social anxiety, and it sort of takes place in like a 5 to 7 minute time period of all these friends getting ready to go out, and then our main character is struggling, with his anxiety. And to not give too much away, I have a uniquely funny angle that will provide maybe some like levity to it, but also kind of not so much awareness, but just like an understanding to that kind of anxiety, and have people that experience it be like, yes, that's how it is, and have people that don't experience it necessarily be like, oh wow, that sucks. So. Yeah.
What did you both do before you made a film? Have you been making films most of your life, or did you just start, or where are you?
We both went to film school, and so we both did our senior thesis film, and Ben was actually both of our cinematographers for it. Yeah. I also realized, this is off topic, but still on topic, that this is the 18th annual Jasper, right?
Yes.
And Firebird Festival, it was the 18th annual festival.
Wow.
Just realized. So,
The festival within the
cool.
festival.
Yes,
Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
Festivalception. What was I talking about?
You, what did you do?
Oh, right.
And why did you, when did you know you wanted to be a filmmaker?
Oh, wow. I knew when I was about 16, and I was home with the flu from school, and I just was searching for a movie to watch, and the movie I decided to watch was Inglourious Basterds, and that changed everything.
Yeah.
Like, it was
For a lot of us.
like after that, I was like, despite having the flu, I was like pacing around like my living room, being like, whoa, that was crazy. And then it was sort of overnight. Like I just delved into films and directors, and I didn't know like I watched movies sometimes, but like it was clear that they are art, and people make them, or a singular person makes them, like a director. So yeah, at 16 it was like overnight. So.
Cool. I don't have a film like that, honestly. I mean, I've always loved movies, but I've always loved art. And I guess I always knew I wanted to be a visual artist, but it wasn't until like late in high school, my parents signed me up for a documentary class in Philly. Thanks, Mom. And so I got to make my first like short documentary about this graffiti artist in Philadelphia, and it was so cool. It was so cool, like getting to know this guy, but also just kind of like being taken to his spots and like how he created his art and his tag, and then whoever originally signed up to be the editor dropped out of the class, and so then I was like, oh, I guess I gotta do it, and then I made it, and I was like, listen, I don't think it was very good because it was my first try, but it was really cool. It was like really fun, and it was so new and exciting, and I was like, I
It was
just,
an accomplishment.
I want to do it again. Like, I want to hear people's stories and like kind of understand like what makes them tick and what makes them want to make art, and so yeah, that's kind of where I started, and then I kept going, I guess. So I guess I've always done it, yeah.
How old were you?
Probably 17.
I think I'm gonna sneeze, so if I sneeze, I'm sorry. I just wanna say that I think it's wonderful to have you here from Pennsylvania, and you're speaking to a small community that you just did a documentary about. How inspiring that is for us, and thank you for coming. There's so many festivals to go to, and you came here, and we're just so appreciative of you being here. And please come back with your next.
Wonderful. Thank you for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So please stay around if you want to hang around. We have our last film. We've never done a closing film. We have Forked, which is a story about Susan Vinegar, who is a celebrity chef. And this is going to sound weird, but she wanted to be a chef, and women weren't allowed in the kitchens in the restaurants, which is crazy to think about. But she and her friend figured out a way to weasel their way in there. They also were one of the first chefs to have a cooking show, Two Hot Tamales.
Yeah.
They were on Oprah and Ellen DeGeneres and the Good Morning America. She's gone on to do, I don't know how many restaurants, but she has them in LA and Palm Springs and now in Las Vegas. And she's coming with the director, so they'll be here in just a little bit. So please stay and enjoy the film. It's a very inspiring film, and I'm just so thankful that they're coming to Hollister, California, to watch their film and be here for us. So please stay and watch the films that we have coming up. Thank you.